let's start. I'm going to share my presentation now, and first I'd like to start with telling you why I decided to talk about it, how I got interested in this. If you remember, I hope you remember, that today we're going to talk about not just CAE preparation, but one specific part of it, which is self-assessment, how to develop this skill and what we can do to ensure that our students are aware of such strategies and what we can do to raise their awareness and how to boost their confidence. I've been teaching for FCE and CAE since 2019. And when I just started, I kind of didn't realize that my students are not always teachers like me, even though I often have teachers in my courses, I sometimes forget that our students are not always aware of those techniques and those approaches that we teachers are using. And surprisingly enough, after my courses, sometimes after my first groups, after my first courses finished, some of my students came up to me and they looked, maybe not like that, but I could see in their eyes that they were really anxious and a bit apprehensive. And they asked me, what do you think? Am I ready for the exam? Do you think I should take it? Or maybe I should wait? Or maybe I should do something else? I should do another course maybe? And it was pretty surprising for me that they were asking that after the course, because I saw all the progress they made, but apparently they didn't. And after the course, they didn't even know if they are ready. And it got me thinking, how can we ensure that they actually monitor their progress themselves? And how can we make sure that after the course, they will actually know whether they are ready, or they will know what they can do to improve in the future? And sometimes at the beginning of the course, perhaps you if you have some experience teaching for exams, not just CAE, not just Cambridge exams, even if you're planning, even if you're just planning to start it, perhaps the first thing we should do is to ask them what they expect from the course. And that's what I usually do, like when we have them to speak in pairs, in groups, and just tell each other what they expect from the course and why they want to take the exam. And sometimes I can hear, yeah, I want to prepare for the exam. I want to improve my level. And sometimes they ask me after the first lesson, can you guarantee that I will pass the exam after this course? And at first, I was a bit perplexed because I realized that I can't guarantee that you will pass the exam. There's so many factors. There's so many things that can influence your results. And I decided to start my courses with the clear, let's say the clear explanation, the clear idea of what they should expect from the course. And I could say that, yeah, okay, I can't guarantee that you will get the desire you want, but what I can guarantee is that you will actually know what to do and how to prepare yourself for the course. And they seemed satisfied with this reply. So starting from the very beginning of the course, they know what to expect. And we actually tell them that we expect some work from their side. There is no magic pill that we teachers can do. We can help them, we can be their mentors, but if they want to prepare for the exam, they will have to do most of the work, of course. And okay. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to discuss today. Here is a little plan. We are going to start with talking about what self-assessment actually is, and what its role is in the learning process, in particular in Cambridge exam preparation courses. We're going to discuss when it is better to start developing these skills and how to work with exam assessment criteria. I'm going to focus mostly on CAE because I'm experienced in this, but it doesn't mean that if you're preparing for other exams, this won't be useful for you. So it will be very practical for those who are teaching for Cambridge exams or even other exams like IELTS or TOEFL, for example. So I think these techniques are rather universal. And I'm going to share some of online sources that I personally used in my courses to help the students. And sometimes it was really, really useful for me as a teacher. You will see that it can be really a lifesaver. And at the end, I'm going to answer some of your questions. So let's get the ball rolling. Like I said, we're going to start with the definition of self-assessment itself and its role. Generally, self-assessment is defined as the active process of analyzing and evaluating oneself or one's actions. This is one of the definitions from Merriam-Webster dictionary, and I liked it most, but it sounds rather generalized. So I decided to dig into it and to have a look at some definitions and some research about self-assessment in the context of learning. So here's what I found. If we look at the self-assessment in the system of different types of assessment, we can see that it belongs to formative assessment and informal assessment. This is the table that I found on this website. There will be some references at the end. And it was based on the description of different types of assessment by the UK's National Foundation for Education Research report. So I will leave some links. There will be some links at the end. If you want to do some research of your own, feel free. You will be able to do this after the webinar. Now, about the definition itself, I have also found a more formal definition, a more formal term, metacognition. So if we look at the elements of this word, we can see that it consists of the prefix, the Greek prefix meta, which means about, and cognition, which means thinking. So basically metacognition is thinking about thinking. And according to Baker and Brown, metacognition involves two basic constructs. The first one is a student's awareness of the processes they need to successfully complete a task. And I think it's really relevant for exam preparation students because this is one of the main goals of our courses. We want them to analyze the strategies they are using. We want them to think about how they deal with the tasks. And the second thing is students monitoring. So if you can see the description, it is the ability to determine if the task has been completed correctly and to make changes along the way if not. So I think that this is one of the key points. We want the students to not only be aware of these strategies, but also to analyze if these strategies work for them. Yes, Cambridge provides some tips and recommendations and strategies that they believe would be practical for all the candidates, for all the learners. But sometimes I noticed some strategies just don't work for me. Some strategies don't work for all the students. And they also shared with me some of their experience saying that they tried it and it didn't really work. So why not to try something else? Yeah, so they shouldn't be afraid to do that. And there is one more interesting point that I found about metacognitive skills. They also include taking conscious control of learning, planning and selecting strategies, monitoring the progress of learning, correcting errors, analyzing the effectiveness of learning strategies, and changing learning behaviors when necessary. So when I read it, I realized that our students should become their own teachers, pretty much. This is what we as teachers usually do. And yeah, that's a lot of things that students just sometimes don't even think about, and they just expect the teacher to do all the work. But we could help them develop these skills. We could help them become their own teachers in some way. And about the role of self-assessment, I'm going to tell you about how I wanted to change my students' attitude during the course, at the beginning of the course, and at the end of the course. So I developed rule of 3 self. The first purpose, why we need the first purpose of developing self-assessment is that we improve our students' self-reliance. They become more independent, they become more autonomous, and instead of this attitude at the beginning of the course, I want the teacher to prepare me for the exam, we want to change it into, I want the teacher to teach me how to prepare for the exam. So they know that after the course, they will be independent, they will be autonomous learners, and they will be able to continue their preparation even long after the course is finished. They won't be relying on the teacher that much. The second self is self-awareness. So instead of this attitude, oh no, I made a mistake, so I'm not ready for the exam. I notice the students all very, very often don't notice their progress. They tend to focus on their mistakes, and they don't really realize that to be ready for the exam, it doesn't mean that they have to complete all the tasks with 100% correct results. They don't really understand when they are ready. And let's face it, in a lot of cases, they will never feel ready for the exam. In my practice, only one student in 3 years of my preparation practice, exam preparation, only one student felt 100% ready. And I think it was rather an exception. The rest of my students never said that they're ready. And they asked me, so when will I feel ready? Yeah. And I told them that probably never, if we just talk, if we only rely on our feelings. So instead of this attitude, we want to think that we want them to think like this: I made mistakes in some tasks, but I succeeded in others. So we want them to see not only their weaknesses, not only the challenges, but also their progress. And after, of course, it would be logical to assume that if we improve their self-reliance and self-awareness, at the end of the course, we want them to be more self-confident. So after that, after this attitude, coming up to the teacher and saying, am I ready for the exam? Yeah, should I take it or not? We want them to think like this: based on my results, I'm ready. Or based on my results, I can see that I still need to work on some skills. I'm good at these tasks, but I'm not very good at these. So I need to do this and this. So I already know the strategies. I want to prepare a bit more, but they will be able to do this even without a teacher. And when should we start developing these skills? Okay. Let's see, I divided this process into 3 stages. In fact, I think that we should start from the very, very beginning, from the very, very first lesson. So at the beginning of the course, we start with some introspection. This is another fancy word for self-reflection. So during the course, we start developing strategies, and after that is main stage of self-assessment. And at the end of the course, we also finish with some introspection. Now, I'm going to talk about these stage number 1 and stage number 3 in a bit of more detail, and then I'll proceed with during the course stage. So what I started, I usually give my students some kind of questionnaires at the beginning. I call it portfolio. We can also call it some kind of self-reflection form, let's say. And you can see some examples of questions that I included. These are 2 questionnaires. The left one is something that I give at the beginning of the course. So I ask them what their reason of taking CAE is. This is also good for them to know and for me. What their desired result is, how much they think they know about the exam, because we know that the students come with different backgrounds. Some of them had already taken the exam, some of them know little to nothing about it. So it is important for us to know as well how much they think they know about this exam, and then how confident they're feeling now before the course begins. And then I ask them to put to answer the question how confident they think they are about each exam part. I specifically included this question, percentage, in this question, because if you don't, there is a chance that they will answer with a very, very vague something. The answer will be really vague, like, yeah, I feel ready, or no, I don't feel ready at all. And it's not very helpful because we want them to start thinking about it more specifically. And at the end of the course, you can see that the questions are very, very similar. So what I do, I usually give them their portfolio, their questionnaire from the very first lesson, and then I have them compare their answers from the first portfolio. There's some kind of echo. So I ask them to compare their answers, and they actually see whether they made some progress and whether they feel more confident, and they see that they actually found out something new, and now they know more about the exam. And it also can affect their self-confidence before they actually move on to the real exam. So this is the first and the last stage. Now let's talk about the stage that goes in the middle of the course. We're going to talk about 2 types of skills: receptive skills and then productive skills. I decided to start with receptive skills because they, in my opinion, they are easier to work with, to assess yourselves. Basically, this is what students can do on their own. You don't really require any feedback, like not always at least, but it is possible to work here without feedback from another person. You can do it more regularly. So what we can do, we can ask the students to track their progress with the help of some recording their correct answers, first of all, and the time that it takes them to complete the task. I think these are the key elements of their progress, because if they see that they completed all the tasks in reading, fine, it's 100%, but in use of English, they made some mistakes. Sometimes they think that they are not ready for the exam because they made this mistake. So this is when we can refer to these statistics that they keep, and we can say, but look, you've got correct answers in this task. Yeah, you made a few mistakes here, but this is something you can just work on in the future. And after that, when we point out that, okay, this task is something that you need to work on more, you can analyze why you made this mistake, and maybe you can try and change your strategies. And maybe we can suggest some different ways to deal with this particular task. I know that some students are more or less old school, and they prefer to keep their records in good old notebooks, which is fine. They can just get a notebook specifically for this task, and they can write down their results and time. But I've also found an interesting online resource. It was designed for, I think, for managers, for business people who are working in different projects, especially with teams. But I think it's a pretty cool tool for us, and we can also provide our students with this if they want to see their results and if they want to develop this habit of practicing the tasks on their own. Let me show you what it can do. Okay, that will be, so it's called Clockify. In this presentation, you will see the link. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Right, so it does require registration, but it's totally free. Well, at least I didn't see any requirements to pay for it. And I have been able to use it for free. All right. So let me show you just some examples what they can do when they work in their receptive skills. Mm-hmm. Okay, takes a while to download. Yeah, so here's what you see. You can see that there is also a really nice function, a timer. We can press Add Project. This project could be, for example, reading. Let's say if we talk about CAE, let's say reading part 6. So they want to practice this skill today. Reading. Reading. We want to add it. Reading part 6. And we can press start. So they do this task. They can see the time. Then we press stop. Let's say, well, of course, it won't take 6 seconds, but let's say it took me 15 minutes to deal with this task. And it's saved here. Then we can start another project. Let's say use of English. Part 1, part 2. And then start. They do the task. Then they stop and they see how much time it took. And then they can just get back to this, let's say every day, ideally, but even like a few times a week. And there is another really nice function here. They can see their statistics and it can be sent to them via email, and they can see how much work they've done during the week, what their average time was, what their average result was. And then they can see which points, the results are saved there automatically. So they just need to register, and then they can always open this page. They can delete it, of course, but they can always see the results. They can always see the time. And like I said, the results are also sent to them via email if they want to subscribe for the news. And it's really, really useful for them to see, to track their progress. So the only thing that I find a bit inconvenient for this specific purpose is that there is no field for any additional comments, but I thought you could just write your results here, for example, 8 out of 8, like this. So you can still write down your results in this title field, and that would be enough. So it's also good, like I said, it's also good for developing their habit of practicing on their own. And after that, even if they ask you, so am I ready for the exam? Should I take it? You can actually ask them to show their statistics, and you can say, okay, so you're ready, like in terms of reading, you are good. In terms of listening, maybe if you just practice a bit more, if you just do some more tasks in part 2, for example, and part 4, then and see your results. If your result is average, the average result is, let's say, 80% or 60%, depending on their desired pass grade, then we can actually tell them when they're ready, or they can, who knows, they can even tell on their own. Right, let's get back to the presentation. Of course, you can probably have a look at some other websites like this, but for now, this is the best I have found so far. Because it's got the timer. Now, let's talk about productive skills. And here, they usually are a bit more tricky because, as we know, they require some feedback, some constant feedback. So, of course, we can't just ask our students to assess themselves right from the beginning and say, okay, yeah, are you good or not? What do you think? Are you ready for a speaking part? They don't even know how to assess themselves in terms, usually, if they hadn't taken any courses previously. So first, we need to prepare them. And we need to take certain steps to get them familiarized with the criteria, then practicing, and then they can move on to self-assessment. I'm going to talk about these steps in more detail. So usually, when I provide them with the exam criteria, they read them, and I also give them handouts with this table from the teacher's book. As if you have taught Cambridge exams, you probably know what I'm talking about. Cambridge provides this free handbook for teachers, and they can see basically this description of criteria for examiners. But from my experience, they usually don't fully understand what they mean. Even though it seems to us that it's pretty straightforward, unfortunately for students, it's like, yeah, they think they understood, but in fact, if we ask them to analyze it, to give some feedback, they don't always understand what's going on. So that's why, sorry, that's too early. That's why I decided to give them checklists instead, and we can just see, we can analyze the criteria, and we can create those checklists with more simple questions. Usually it's just a yes/no question, and it makes this feedback practice much easier and much more understandable for the students. And I will also show you another source that I heard of during one of the webinars, and it was the webinar that was aimed at developing students' independence, which is also pretty close to our topic today. But this source is specifically helpful for those who are preparing for exams. Basically, it is the website called AuthorEye, which is just a platform for recording, for making notes, audio notes, and it transforms your audio into text. It's one of the best sites in terms of accuracy. Let me show you how it works. It's also free, well, up to a point, but I think it's more than enough for our students, because if I'm not mistaken, it gives you about 600 minutes a month for free. So I think it will be more than enough to practice. Basically, they also need to sign up. And then they can just press record. There's also an app. They can do this on their phones or on their computers. And let me show you how this website works. Hello, my name is Olga. And you're just recording your voice. After that, you will see your answer in the text form. And it's saved. After that, we also get some benefit because they can share their answers with us. And it is easier for us to see, not just to listen, but to see their good things, what kind of language they used. And we can comment on what was good and what they can improve in the future. So it's called AuthorEye. Again, it is in my presentation. You've got the link here. So this way, they also visualize their answer. And then the students themselves can see probably, and I ask them to record themselves several times. If they see that, oh, this could have been done better, yes, please do. This is the point of your practice, to see your answers, to analyze and try again. So I always ask them to send me the best version in their opinion. And here is what I do. So again, it's much more convenient than just listening. This is an example of one of my students' answers. It can be sent in Word document or just as text. And then I mark some good things, something that I want to praise. I highlight it in green and I give my comments like, oh, so you use some good language of speculation here. Here you answered the question in part 2. Here you use some topic related vocabulary. But here, for example, I could, as I'm listening as well, not just reading, I could hear that you mispronounced this word, so check the pronunciation of this word. Or here, for example, you could have used a different preposition. So this way, again, it gives them some kind of more visualized feedback. They can see how much good things they also, how many good aspects there are in their answers, not just mistakes. And then it also gives them more confidence. After that, when the teacher gives feedback, usually after a while, it should be done on a regular basis so that they could come to terms with the system, with criteria. After that, they can also give feedback to their partners. So I also give them checklists, and I encourage them to use specific examples of good things. If you don't give them checklists, there is a chance that their feedback to each other will be very vague. Something like, yeah, your answer was great, well done. Well, or your answer was okay. Right, you used a lot of good language, yeah. But is it actually very helpful? Is it helpful for their partners? Is it helpful for themselves? The more specific it is, the better. So I will show you some examples of checklists later. So it is a good idea to give them very, very specific questions and probably encourage them to write, if they have time, to write those examples. And after that, they also, they get used to this system, they know the criteria, and then they can move on to self-assessment, which is basically the same thing they did for their partners, but this time I just asked them to do the same thing I did, but with their own answers. They can either mark it like I do, like good things in green, and I ask them to write something like, yeah, I used good vocabulary here, I answered the question here, I provided good examples here. So I ask them not to be too modest. And then also, if they see that there is something they can improve, they can also mention it. But again, if they feel like, oh, well, if I know that I can improve it and I want to improve it, they can just redo the task and send me, like, again, the best version with a better way. And this is how we can also see that they do understand what is expected from them. They do understand what kind of criteria examiners will use. Now, here's the example of speaking checklists. So as you can see, the questions are usually yes, no. It also gives them, it also makes it easier to give feedback. Like if yes, then great, no problems here. If no, why not? What could have been improved? Now, in writing, the system is pretty much similar. As you can see, the steps are very, very much alike to speaking self-assessment. So first, we need to get the students familiarized with the assessment criteria. And again, I usually give them handouts first, then I make checklists, then I give them feedback for a while, and then they start working with samples. They start checking their partners' assignments, and then we move to self-assessment. I'm going to talk about each stage. So we start with giving them handouts. This is what I usually do at the beginning. This is the table with writing assessment criteria for examiners from Advanced Handbook for Teachers. And I don't know how about you, if you've got some experience, if you provided your students with this table, but my students usually didn't really understand much from this. And to be honest, it took me some time to understand each subscale. It took me a while to fully understand each of them, even though it seems, again, it seems simple at first glance, but when you start analyzing it, you realize that, well, you've got some questions. So I've also found some free materials on Cambridge with checklists for students, and this was much more helpful. They basically divided the same criteria, but they provided more simple questions. Again, yes, no questions. And that's what students can do. If when they start writing, they can ask themselves these questions. If they answer yes, and it's great, they can move on. If no, maybe it would be nice to change something, to paraphrase something. So content, communicative achievement, then organization and language. Some examples here, and usually they find it more helpful than just this really vague table from the handbook. Yeah, about these criteria. So like I said before, when they more or less know what is expected, they can start working with samples. And again, this handbook also contains lots of samples from real candidates. I usually ask my students to work together and to read those samples, but I don't give them the scores that examiners gave them. So first, they should read and they should put themselves in examiner's shoes, and they need to give scores themselves. They need to justify it, and they need to discuss what they liked about this answer and what they could improve. And after that, they can compare their scores with the real examiner's results and comments. And what I noticed, they tend to be quite strict. They never want to give the highest scores for some reason, even if the examiners did. So I think that this is also what happens when they do their own writing. They tend to be very, very strict, and they tend to focus on negative things, on mistakes or on their weaknesses. But we can remind them that this is not how examiners assess. They tend to focus on what the student can do rather than what they can't do. So they will see that some candidates do receive very high scores, even if they make mistakes. And that can also be very motivating. And then I often get asked, so how do I know that I used advanced language, advanced grammar? Even though our students are supposed to already have this advanced level, they tend to forget what is advanced grammar. So one of my students once came across this nice mnemonic phrase, and I think it's a perfect technique that I often share with my students. And I say, if you are not sure that you used enough complex grammar, you can just remember this sentence: please more cupcakes right now. And then each of the initial letters stands for some kind of complex grammar structure. So maybe you can guess what P stands for. Maybe you can write some of your, yeah, of course, it's passive voice, but also it can be participle clause. So passive structure is not just passive voice. We know that passive voice can be really, really simple, and it can be even used by B1 students. Models, of course, you're right. Again, we can remind them that when we say models, it isn't enough just to say, yeah, I can do this, I must do this. You should demonstrate a wide range, of models, like past models, models of deduction, of course. Yeah, I can see that you already know conditionals, of course. And you see that I also marked another C, but actually there are 3 advanced structures they can use. So we can also remind them different types of conditionals. Mixed conditionals would be really good. More advanced structures to start conditional. So what else C can stand for? Can be conditionals. Okay, yeah, complex object, that too. Cleft sentences, yeah, I included it. So conditionals, comparative structures, and cleft sentences. And causatives as well. Yeah, well, passive structures, we can also include it here. Like I said, we should remind them that we need to use different types, a range of these structures. Then relative clauses, again, advanced reported speech as well. In some cases, when it is appropriate, there are certain writing types that allow you to use reported speech. And any ideas for N? That's usually the trickiest part. Or maybe you can just think of another advanced structure that I haven't mentioned. Oh, narrative tenses. Yeah, very good. That could be done too. And noun phrases as well. Normalization. Well, yeah, your ideas are also great. But also, I usually say, well, try to use a negative inversion at least once. Yeah, inversion, that's it. So we somehow found a way to include inversion into this phrase. But of course, your ideas are also good. You can also add them to the list. Again, it's pretty hard for the students to include all of these structures in every single writing assignment. So at least we can ask them to use at least one type, or at least some of them. Yeah, this we can see that some letters stand for several structures, but they don't really have to remember all of the rules they've been learning for their whole life. Yeah, but as long as they used at least some structures once, and they should use them appropriately. So this is just something that, again, they can ask themselves this question. Did I use model? Maybe I can add it. Did I use passive structures? Maybe I can add it somewhere. And it can help them to assess their score for language, to give themselves this result. And now, again, I want to show my system of giving feedback to my students. So you can see it's very similar to speaking feedback. I also highlight good things in green. And in comments, in the side comments, I use the letters that stand for each criterion. For example, here, this is good for organization because this was a proposal and they used a title and they used subheading. So it is typical of proposal and it gives you some good points for organization. If it's like language, also good grammar, we can write, okay, you used complex grammar here, that's L for language, so I'm giving you points for that. Or if we see that we have some suggestions on improvement, for example, instead of a big problem, we can say, oh, it's a serious issue, relevant issue. It would be more formal, so it would affect your language or it would affect your communicative achievement. Again, if it's like something that we can do to improve our organization, we can suggest adding a linker somewhere, and we also put O, and they know that. So we've got some green things for organization, but also we've got some things that could be improved in organization. So if they have 4 for organization, they will know why, usually. After a while, again, when they get used to the system, more or less, I ask them to give feedback to their peers using the same checklist, the same criteria, and also to justify it and to give some recommendations. And after that, when I see that they are more or less, they more or less know the system and the criteria, I ask them to give scores and give assessment to their own answers. And they usually don't like it. They usually react like this. So basically, at first, they hear the self-assessment and then they realize that they have to assess themselves. They have to justify their own scores, and they don't like it at first. And first time I did it, actually, first time I came up with this idea, I thought, oh, this is going to go really well. And then when I received the self-assessment for the first time, I saw 4. I don't know why, because I don't want to give myself 5. I think I don't deserve it. This is how, and I said, okay, well, now you can compare it to my feedback. I give you 5 because I see no reasons why not. It's content. It was content. It's 5 because you covered all the points. Why didn't you give yourself 5? Just because I don't know, no reasons, just because they are too modest. Or I saw that sometimes I could see which criteria could be discussed more. For example, they could give themselves 4 for communicative achievement, and their justification in brackets was because I didn't use like enough linkers or something like I didn't divide the text into paragraphs. But that would be more for organization. Yeah, in some way for communicative achievement as well. But that's more that could affect your organization. And I could still see that most of the students don't really know much about what communicative achievement is. And I saw that we actually needed to discuss it more, and we needed to like provide more examples. And then in the future, I asked them to focus on communicative achievement as well. So, and after that, yeah, again, if you do this on a regular basis, they get used to it. And yeah, by the end of the course, they must know these criteria by heart. And I often remind them that in the exam, there won't be a teacher and you won't have your peers. Unfortunately, you will have to be your own examiner. Yeah, there will be no one who will give you feedback. Even when you get your results, examiners don't write feedback, right? You just know that, okay, I've got +A, I've got this score, and they don't really explain why. So it would be good if you could analyze your answer on your own. And I've got some additional online sources here. If you follow Cambridge social media, you may have heard of these 2 websites, Speak and Improve, Write and Improve. I can just quickly demonstrate how they work. And I usually just give these links to the students to encourage their extra practice, and they can work on their own. The first one would be Speak and Improve. So it's free. Again, really nice websites, they're free. You start speaking, there are several speaking tasks. They also record their answer. And then this artificial intelligence gives them feedback, and they say, okay, so your level, based on your answer, your level is like B2 or C1. Yes, it's not flawless. It's not absolutely perfect. Again, there is no like human factor here, but still for self-study, it's a really good thing. They can even analyze their feeling because they are already aware of the criteria and they are used to giving themselves some feedback. So they can even compare some feedback from their peers, from the teacher, and from this artificial intelligence. And Write and Improve works in a similar way. There are also different tasks. Some of them are more exam-like, some of them are different from their exams, but you can see that this website is also helpful for other exams, not just CAE. So it's pretty much the same. They write their answer, the website analyzes them and also gives feedback about their level. And they can also see, like I tried it and I could see that not everything was actually addressed. There were a few issues, but in general, it's also pretty good for self-study. And we could also encourage them to work with their peers, not just in classroom, but perhaps maybe arrange some additional meetings and also discuss and also give each other some feedback and also compare it to this artificial intelligence. And one more website that I once heard of, again, during one of the webinars, I think it's really good for students who don't know how to assess their language. And it's good for communicative achievement as well. So this is the Oxford Dictionary, Oxford Phrasal Academic Lexicon. If the students are not sure if they use enough advanced vocabulary, or if the words they used are formal or informal enough, they can check it here. For example, let's see if we use the word abnormal, and then the dictionary will show that it's a written word. So it would be good in certain types of assignments which are more formal. They can see different contexts and they can see a language bank and some more examples, and that could be really, really useful if they want to improve their vocabulary score, their language score, not just grammar. And where is my, okay, so these resources will also be in the presentation. I usually just send my students links and I ask them to, I encourage them to use them just to avoid Google Translation, stuff like this. And I've heard from my students that it was rather helpful. So you can also check it out. Again, all the links will be in the presentation here. So also there are some references to the sources I used. If you want to, again, if you want to do some research of your own, you can read the blogs that I found. There is lots of theory and lots of practical tips as well. And not just for exam preparation, but just about learning in general. General English would be really good as well. So I think that's all I wanted to share with you for now, but maybe if you've got some questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, thank you too. We've got a few minutes. Yeah, thank you too. I hope that your students will also like them. Yeah, and what I noticed, like I said, some of these tools are really good for us teachers because they allow us to save a lot of time. They allow us to give more detailed feedback. And yeah, some of them are really good time savers. Thank you too. So, any questions maybe?
Oh, I think we have a question. How can we help students not to worry at the exam? Or like, can you give some tips?
All right. Yeah, like I said, when they will still worry. And I always say, you will never be ready. So it's usually just our mentality. Yeah, we should give them this advice. Like if you're worrying about it, if you're feeling anxious, what is the reason? Is it actually objective? Is it based on your results, or is it just because you think that you just know that, oh, I'm going to fail? It's just your mindset. Because if you see that your results are good, again, that's why these tools can be useful. You can say, okay, look at your statistics. You can see that your average result is like 70% or 80%. And we can see that your time is also good. The tasks don't really take too much time, and it would be really it would be okay for the exam. So why are you worrying? Yeah, again, these numbers, they are more objective, and in most cases, yeah, they will see that there is no reason then. And it's important for them to know that even to pass the exam, even to get passé, to pass with flying colors, they don't have to give 100% of correct answers. And they can even fail one of the papers, yeah, because the result is usually just the calculated in such a way that they can pass like some papers, and they can fail, and then yeah, there is some balance.
Yeah, we have one more question. Let me pick it up for you from the chat box. How resistant were your first students to using this system?
No, they actually, usually exam students are quite motivated. Yeah, like I say, if you came here to prepare, and this is why it's important to tell them in advance in the very first lesson that in this course you are going to do most of the work on your own. And this language, like exam preparation, learning a skill, is pretty much like it's a skill. It's not just theoretical knowledge. And if we talk about sport, for example, you don't expect to become a professional athlete if you just watch people doing that, or if you're just listening to your coach who is telling you what you should do. You only get better when you start practicing. And the same is about language and exam preparation. Like, you need to practice, especially in writing and speaking, if you actually want to develop this skill. Yeah, and actually I see the question, how to make students to actually do the writing and speaking practice. So I asked them to record their answers and to send it to me. That's their homework. So obviously you can't really force them to do that. But again, at the beginning of the course, you can warn them that there will be a lot of homework. And if they actually want to, again, they want some guarantees. Yeah, I can guarantee you guys that I will teach you how to prepare yourself, how to prepare for the exam on your own. So I'm telling you, to prepare, you need to practice. Like, if you really want to achieve this result. Usually those students, yeah, they are motivated and they want to pass the exam. So at first, yeah, they are pretty scared, but eventually, if you do this, if you practice regularly, they just get used to it and they see their progress, and they start, by the end of the course, they usually say, yeah, I'm feeling much more confident. It's especially compared to the first lesson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ola. I think we don't have any questions anymore, except some questions about the organization of the event. Thank you very much. It was very useful.
Thank you.
I'm now preparing for CAE. I have always picked some tips from you. Thank you very much. What I would like to add, probably from my own experience, is better to take the exam by yourself to prepare your students better. Yeah, I know that Ola has taken C1 advanced, C2 proficiency, and IELTS exam. Yeah, all possible exams for English teachers. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm going to tell you a few things about what's going to happen after this exam, after this webinar. So we are going to share the recording with you, and we are going to email it to you tomorrow. So you will receive your certificates, don't worry. You can also find out about our upcoming events on our website. And the next workshop by Andriy Pigarev, our CELTA tutor and academic director, is going to take place on the 14th of July. So please join us if you are interested in taking CELTA, for example, or even moving on to Delta. This is going to be very helpful for all teachers. And we are also have planned some events for the teachers in July. This is the webinar by Yulia Pronina, who is also a ticketed tutor. And she's going to talk about managing pupils' language learning. Yeah. We also constantly run CAE preparation courses, not only CAE, but also B2 first, C2 proficiency. And you can prepare for these exams at our center online. Unfortunately, we cannot run the exams right now in Ukraine, but if you are not in the country, if you are abroad, there are a lot of Cambridge centers around the world. And you can prepare with us for these exams and take them in another center. But we do hope that if the situation in Ukraine improves, we are going to run exam sessions again. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, do you have any questions about our teacher training services? Yeah, we are going to have some more webinars for exam preparation, Oksana, yes, and we have planned some for October, I guess, and they are going to be. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your feedback, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
It
was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, see you again at our upcoming event. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.